Hi there, thanks for joining us today. Today we're going to be talking about 5 tips to help you with your upcoming renovations. But before we start that, let me start by introducing myself. My name is Heather and I'm a senior designer at AyA Kitchens and Bath. We are one of Canada's leading domestically made kitchen fabricators and we're happy to be here with you today. Hopefully we can give you a few tips to make your renovations that much more enjoyable. I'm going to be joined today with one of our friends from Georgian Renovations. So Eric is actually a sales manager and renovation experts from Georgian Renovations. We have a wonderful relationship and he's going to be helping us in a few moments when we get him signed on here, and we'll go through some questions with him. I just wanted to take the time and let you know that AyA Kitchens is still open in manufacturing cabinetry, deemed an essential service. We were happy to be able to help out and help continue the process with kitchens that were being installed and the planning process. Oh, hi Eric, I see you're there. So what we want to try and do today is try and help make sure that your renovation is not overwhelming. There's a lot of different parties that are involved during a kitchen renovation, and sometimes that can be difficult to coordinate. So things like coordinating trades, deciding on materials, and also just things like how to maintain your everyday living while your project is happening. And certainly that can feel overwhelming, and we certainly want to do our best to help you with that and make sure that it can be an enjoyable experience for you. And going into a process like that, making sure you know what to expect certainly will help. So like most things in life, one of the best things to do with anything is make sure you have a good plan. Having a plan in front of you, make sure that you're not overwhelmed and that you know what to expect, even if you're not sure of what to expect. So anyway, let's just talk about plans for a second. Eric will certainly be able to jump in and help us a little bit more with tools of how to plan ahead. But things to think about when starting a renovation are things like, what will you do with your pets or your family during this period? So I guess the question, Eric, is do you have any specific tools that you would recommend to someone starting a kitchen renovation, how they can start the planning process to make sure that everything is laid out as best as possible to begin? Oh, so thanks, Eric. He's suggesting working with a designer. I totally agree. There are certainly some things that us as design professionals can help with, questions that arise. We can certainly help you organize your project as well from the initial planning phase, making sure that you're not forgetting crucial measurements or materials, things like that. We're definitely happy to help you with that. I think certainly in a lot of these cases, and Eric, I'm sure you can attest to this as well, making sure that as many factors have been planned in advance as possible. So I think that extends everything from materials, layout, different trades. So when we talk about trades, we're looking at things like electrical, plumbing. If there's any structural work, that's where someone like Eric would come in and really be helpful. Being in the business for so many years, Eric would know what to look for and to make sure that those little things that to an experienced eye may not understand or pay attention to, Eric would be able to help with that. Any good contractor would know what to look for. So aside from, or part of, I guess, the planning process would also be looking at scheduling. Eric mentioned scope of work identified. Absolutely, Eric, I totally agree with that. Scope of work is definitely something that can seem a little daunting, but the help of professionals can certainly help with that scope of work. And for anyone who doesn't understand what scope of work means, all that really is just a term that's used to help outline the events that will happen during your renovation process. It can be quite extensive. It can discuss items like, well, we're going to get to a few of them, but budget, materials, scheduling, which we'll touch on in a moment as well, proper cleanup, as Eric says too, securing the home, all things like that. Definitely allowing a scope of work would certainly help take away some of those questions. I think when we talk about scheduling, what we're looking to do is obviously take a look at how long it will take to do the full project, and also just the steps along the way as well. So everything from the beginning of when you need to have materials selected, and again, this can be a long list depending on how extensive your renovation will be. It could be everything from flooring to lighting, obviously kitchen cabinetry in the design process. I think it's important to make sure that you have a schedule laid out. Now, that being said, there's always the chance of delays, and that's to be expected. But making sure that you have a little bit of contingency time built into that schedule, I think, is definitely important. Sometimes, you'll run into delays that might be acts of nature. It could be bad weather, flooding, freezing, snow, all that type of stuff. So that can impact your schedule, but still, again, like most things in life, it's good to have a good plan for that. As Eric says, have a plan for the impact on the family. Excellent point, Eric. That's a great point. Having the whole family involved in a renovation can be challenging at best, and how that impacts your family. Kids, pets, elderly family members can certainly take its toll on everyone if they're not understanding what the whole process will look like from beginning to end. Great point. How long your project will take largely will depend on the scope of work, I think, as well. If it's obviously just a quick kitchen replacement, let's say, kitchen out, kitchen in, obviously that would be a much quicker schedule. If you're looking at an older home or maybe major structural changes, a realistic time frame which your contractor or renovation expert can help you with is definitely beneficial. So Eric points out here, where are you going to prep your meals? Excellent point. Can you move out, or should you move out? Very good point, Eric. Those are definitely things that would impact your schedule, your planning, and your budget as well. What else do you need? Absolutely. So appliances, furniture, decor, all that is part of the big picture and important things not to forget, even coming down to things like light fixtures, which sometimes may get overlooked from the initial scope without an expert, but definitely critical. It's those little items like light fixtures, hardware, that can really, I don't want to say make or break a project, but certainly have a huge impact, I think, on the overall enjoyment of your space. I think, if you're going to the trouble of calling in a lot of trades for your kitchen project, it is an excellent time to think about other projects that you can tackle while working on that. I mean, the kitchen is, as we say, the heart of the home, but certainly, especially in a lot of open house concepts, or open concept houses, there we go, it is an excellent time to look at perhaps renovating your whole space. So getting back to the cleaning factor, Eric is mentioning we clean at the end of the project, the whole house, ducts, all that. Actually, those are excellent points to add to the scope of work as well. Eric, do you find you have any special tips or tricks that you can suggest to people? Let's say they're not renovating their whole space, or their whole main floor, let's say. What if it is just the kitchen area? What kind of things would you suggest to help keep the rest of the house clean if the homeowners need to stay in the house during that period of time? I mean, the mess sometimes, it does tend to spread, as best as our efforts might be to keep things clean. But certainly I think there are some tools that can be used to help minimize the dust flow. Protection plan, excellent, Eric, thank you. Moving furniture, covering furniture as well, protecting other areas, definitely agree with you on that. I think that certainly is an important thing to think about, especially, your cherished furniture. If you're not planning on replacing furniture from the get-go, I think you certainly don't want to have to, in the end, be upset that your furniture is dirtier or dustier or not in the condition that you'd hope. So as Eric points out here, best is moving out if you can. And I think that's definitely a good point if you're looking at doing, a full floor house reno. It is difficult sometimes to try and stay in the space. So that's an important factor as we move on to budgeting in a few moments. Certainly something that I think is important to factor into that overall scope of work is finding a place. All the more important then in that case to make sure your scheduling is relatively accurate. If you are needing to lease a short-term rental, it's important that you go in knowing your timelines and what to expect. Will the reno sustain now and in 10 years ahead? Excellent point as well. Going to the trouble of doing a large-scale reno, I think it is important to make sure that it will stand the test of time if that's something that you are interested in. If it's not a resale or you're looking to flip, you probably don't want to be doing this every year, so you do want to certainly make sure that it stands the test of time for sure. How do you want to entertain now and future? Great point again. And I think that's something, again, experts can help you with, working with a designer, working with a renovator. We tend to help you be able to look at the big picture. And certainly in doing so, ideas like this come up. You want your whole space to make sure that it functions well, that not just for you today, but for you in the near future as well. Aesthetics and function are two of the key things, I think, why everyone wants to do a renovation. If your home's not working for you now, how can you make your home work for you for the long term? Eric points out here, they should be planned into kitchen design, appliances. Yes, thanks. Absolutely. From a kitchen designer's perspective, before we want to complete any part of the design process and before we put anything into production, we absolutely need to know what appliances you're planning to use. Because our cabinetry is built, I don't want to say to fit around your appliances, but we want to make sure that we're looking at the full scope, full project. It would be a shame to go through all this work and then not have the appropriate allotments and spacing left for the appliances that you really were hoping to use. Good point. Audit your kitchen now. As you say, Eric, we'll have enough storage. Appliance garages are amazing. Absolutely. We're definitely seeing appliance garages make a comeback. It's an excellent way of helping to keep your countertops clean and items out of sight. So that's perfect. And that's actually a really good point, Eric, about auditing your space now. And often what we suggest, one of the things that I do at the start of a lot of our consultations is ask people, what do you like right now about your space and what do you wish was different? And I think some people have very specific storage needs or uses in their space, be it young children, older parents. You yourself anticipate being in your home well into retirement and you're working on the project now. I think it's important to make sure that at this stage, planning the renovation, that we make sure to incorporate everything that you need and desire. This is your chance at creating your dream space. Absolutely. So again, here Eric says, new storage technology, definitely. Magic corners, easier and safer, definitely. There is certainly, I think, an appreciation now for the need for accessibility and better use of the space. I think gone are the days of having to crawl into your corner cabinet to try and access things. There's certainly, as Eric mentions, a lot of great new innovative ways to help access the storage that otherwise might be more difficult to use. Natural lighting, Eric points out, increasing windows and door sizes, absolutely all part of the renovation. Often when we help you plan your kitchen for the renovation, we tend to like to look at the whole space, not just the immediate space for your kitchen. Sometimes I find being an outside second set of eyes into your space that's not familiar with how you use it every day, the more information you can provide for us, the more we can help you maybe better utilize your whole space. Sometimes it's a case of one little thing being changed could greatly impact your overall space. If it was the removal of a small wall, especially if it's not load bearing, but just changing a small space, maybe increasing a wall by a few inches could utilize your space a lot better. And those are the kind of things that we can definitely help you out with. Natural light, excellent point too. If you have the ability to add windows, is super. On the contrary though, sometimes windows are not in the right place. A lot of Toronto older homes, we often will find that a window isn't bringing in a whole lot of light. Closing it off might actually impact your kitchen that much more in terms of the usability. Is your kitchen the right size? Can it serve the backyard well? Excellent point as well. Sometimes changing the orientation of the cabinets, rearranging things a little bit can give you greater access to your outdoor space. Absolutely. So again, just going back to the 5 points that we were talking about, we've kind of touched on planning, scheduling, minimizing some of the mess. Noise is another thing that we should probably consider too. As Eric mentions out, often it's best if you can to move out of your space. But let's say you can't. What happens if you work from home? And, you know, that will certainly be impacted during a renovation. You might need to make a plan to work somewhere else during that period. You definitely, especially if you're new to the neighborhood, you don't want to create enemies before you even move in. So certainly some good neighborly gestures probably is a good idea. No weekends. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I think perhaps one of the most daunting topics during a renovation that can sometimes get out of hand is talking about budgets. Budgeting can be difficult. And again, I think here's where you need to rely on some of the experts. With that, we can definitely help you stay within your budget as best as possible. Knowing the trades, knowing the materials that we work with often, I think it's a good idea to help rely on us to help you stay within that budget. Often we can recommend high-end, low-end versions of our products just to help make sure that we keep you in there. Something you should consider is what things can impact your budget, meaning change orders, let's say. We've talked about planning and scheduling and scope of works, but sometimes, as Eric just said, the unexpected can happen. Materials might be back ordered. You might have to make quick changes. Things like that, I think, a contingency plan is always good, a contingency budget. Would you have a recommendation, Eric? How much monetarily would you say people should perhaps factor in for a contingency plan? Now, when we say change orders, other things that can come up might be, unexpected, especially here in Toronto. Things tend to pop up, old wiring, asbestos, things like that, plumbing surprises. So Eric says 5% should be factored in for contingency for those type of things that we've mentioned. If anyone has specific questions, please feel free to leave us some comments, either now or after these posts get saved on our page. And certainly if we don't get to any questions right now, we can definitely address them later on. Just to recap, we've talked about planning, scheduling, how to address the mess, noise, and of course our budget. So Eric says you can ask the city for permits in the area if asbestos is found. Great point. Unfortunately, all too often I think we find right now that that's a huge surprise for people. So if we put that into the planning part of the reno process and know in advance, I think that's excellent planning. So I think the big thing we have touched on today is making sure that planning ahead is the best way to avoid feeling overwhelmed. Well, I think those are the main points we wanted to talk about today. Warranty, thanks Eric, that's a great one as well. Warranty of the workmanship, both from all of your trades involved as well. So as I mentioned, if you do have any comments, please feel free to leave them here for us. We're happy to address that. Also, if you have anything specific that you wanted to talk about, feel free. You'll notice on our page we actually have a schedule that you can actually request to speak to a designer on a virtual consult. So we're more than happy to talk about upcoming projects. I'll point out that we currently at this point right now have extended our 20% off sale, which is one of the best sales we have for the year. And also during this unfortunate time, any kitchen sales moving forward for the duration of this period will be donating 5% to the Daily Bread Food Bank, an initiative that we're very proud of and is important to us. We want to make sure that we do give back to our community. There was a question here about pets as well, removal of pets. Absolutely. From many standpoints. Certainly the health and safety of our pets is something we should not overlook for sure. All right. So again, thank you so much for joining us today. Sorry we were having some technical difficulties. Eric, thank you so much for still participating with us. Hopefully we'll get these kinks worked out and we can try this again, hopefully. Sorry, Barb, thank you for your comment. We've got, because a customer, you should understand that you're purchasing. And if there's something, let's see, sorry, let me just open up that. To understand terminology, ask. Great point, Barb. Certainly ask any questions that you have. Never feel like any question is a bad question. We're all here to help out. And this is a learning curve for a lot of people, not just yourself if you've got the question. So feel free to always ask questions. Being informed is always the best way to go. Anyway, thanks again so much for joining us today. And I look forward to hopefully talking to some of you in the future. All the best. Take care. Stay safe. Bye-bye.